Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Zevachim Daf Chav Gimel. We begin on Chav Beis and Beis, 10 lines off the bottom. Back to the sugya regarding Ziknei Dorim, the elders in the south of Eretz Yisrael, great scholars who introduced a new concept. The Mishnah says, a kohen who is tamei may not do avodah, and if he does, the avodah is possible. However, they told us this is limited to this that we say it's puzzle is only regarding tumas sheretz, if the kohen touched that creature. So yeah, there his avodah is puzzle. But if he touched a mace, you would think a mace is more severe, more strict. It is in a way, but not in this context. Here, say ziknei dorim, if the kohen was tamei mace processed even a private person's carbon, a karban yochid, which typically doesn't allow for any allowances regarding tumah. A carbon tzibur does, right? A public carbon, if the community or the kahanim are tamei, you can process it with tumah, if they are tamei mace. So by a tzibur we find allowances. By a yachid, typically we don't find allowances. However, say ziknei dorim, if it was tumas mace that the kohen was involved in, and he went and did a karban yachid, but the evidence works. Why? The reasoning was because since we find regarding tumas mace, there are allowances, as we explained, regarding karban tzibur. Likewise, b'di'evet, after the fact, if you process the karban yachid in that status, with the kohen being tamei mace, it's kosher. Amar Ula. So Ula now sought to challenge this opinion. Taka. So he quotes Rish Lakish. So Ula quoted Rish Lakish, who challenged the Ziknei Dorim. Taka. He blew, he yelled out, he called out, he challenged. He vocally challenged the scholars from the south. Taka lahu Rish Lakish. Lid Doroi Moi, to the Ziknei Dorim. He says like this: How can you tell me a kohen was tamei mace? But the evidence is kosher even for karban yachid. Look, according to your opinion, whose power is greater to override tumah? Koyach mechaprim, the power of the kohanim who actually process the kapara, process the karban, or koyach miskaprim, or the power of the owners or the recipients of the kapara. So which one is bigger? Habe Omer, clearly, based on yesterday's discussion, where we said that if, let's say, the owner of a karban, let's say a karban Pesach, it's Erev Pesach, time for the karban Pesach, oops, he touched the sheretz. He can still send in his karban because he'll quickly immerse in the mikveh, wait for sundown, and join the Seder, and partake in the karban Pesach. So as we learned yesterday, sheichten v'zorkin al tmei sheretz, we can process a karban on behalf of an owner who's merely tamei sheretz. It's a one-day affair, he'll be available tonight. Nevertheless, if a kohen is a tamei sheretz, even Ziknei Dorim agreed, if he processes a private karban, when he's tamei sheretz, the karban is possible. So clearly, in a way, the owner's power is stronger than the kohen. Right? If the owner is involved in tumas sheretz, no problem. His karban can be brought on his behalf. Not so if the kohen himself is tamei sheretz, he can bring a karban in that, he can't process a karban in that state. So clearly, the owner has an advantage over the kohen. And therefore, we're going to now seek to disprove Ziknei Dorim's position regarding the other matter, regarding them allowing a kohen who's tamei mace to process a karban yachid, as follows. Because even in a situation where a owner was tamei sheretz, nevertheless, as we just said, mishalfin karban is saying they could send in their karban and have it processed, from a distance, remote control. No issue with that. So despite the owner having that advantage, a kohen was not found to have that advantage. Kohen shnitma b'sheretz, as opposed to a kohen who himself became tamei b'sheretz, ein maratza. If he processes a karban yachid, it's possible. So the kohen, in a way, is lower than the owner, has a disadvantage vis-a-vis the owner regarding tumas sheretz. Certainly, wouldn't you agree? Mokem shnitma bal mace, a situation where a Pesach owner, an owner of the karban, became tamei with mace. She'ein meshalchan karban nisayim. So in the middle of the 7 days, he can't send in his karban Pesach. That's what we're assuming. So we're going to switch that. But we're assuming he can't. So regarding Tumas Meis, even the owner is locked out. Wouldn't you agree that the Kohen certainly is locked out? The Kohen who to begin with had a disadvantage. Kohen Shenitma with Meis, certainly a Kohen who became Tamei with Meis. Eino didn't, wouldn't you agree, She'enim Maratza, if he does the carbon Yachid in that state, the carbon is puzzle? The answer is no, because Savri Ziknei Darim, because they hold Tamei Meis Namim Shalach Carbon Noisav. You're making an assumption. Your notion is incorrect. Even the owner of the carbon Pesach was Tamei Meis. Although he shouldn't be sending in his carbon, because he can't partake in that carbon tonight. But if he sends it, it works. So the basis for your Kal V'chomer has to be corrected. In which case, we can surely say that Ziknei Darim's opinion will still hold true. A Kohen who is a Tamei Meis, who processed the carbon Yachid, it's kosher. Okay, so the Chiddush now is, not only if the owner of a carbon Pesach is Tamei Sheretz, can he send in his carbon, even if he's a Tamei Meis. If he sends it in, it works. And by the way, it's going to be these two facts or notions or halachas that we're going to be busy with the next little while. So without going back into the whole sort of mental gymnastics here, but we're meant to know that these are these basic facts serve as the basis for Ziknei Darim's position. Their chiddush was a different chiddush, that a Kohen who is a Tamei Meis, who does a carbon Yachid, is kosher. But as we explained, that halacha is based on a whole configuration of svaros, of factors, which are based on two notions. First of all, that an owner of a carbon Pesach can send in a carbon even when he's Tamei, whether Tamei Sheretz or Tamei Meis. Ask the Gemara, how could you say a Tamei Meis can send in a carbon? Vaksiv, ish ki Tamei, vasa Pesach b'chedin Hashem. The pasuk clearly says, if an owner is Tamei, you gotta wait till your next chance. Pesach Sheni, lemitzvah, preferably. You should have patience. But if he does and he sends it in, it works. Vaksiv, what do you mean? The pasuk says ish achlai. Carbon is meant to be for consumption. Lemitzvah, again, that's the preferred method. But even if the owner is Tamei, you did the carbon on his behalf, so he can't eat, but at least he has the carbon on his credit. Really, it doesn't hold back the kashas of the carbon if the owner, who you're shechting it for, can't eat. Tanya, the Brisa says, Michsas nefashos. Rashi says, Michsas means Lashon Minyan. The number, the count, the guess. You can only join a carbon Pesach if you were counted in, if you were invited, if you were counted into the group. Mulamed, we learn Sheina Pesach Nishchat El Menuyav. The Pesach has to be prepared, has to be shechted for the invitees. Shochter Shloim Menuyav. Let's say you had in mind a stranger. Perhaps he's just not fulfilling a mitzvah. He's not doing it as preferred, but it's still okay. Torah repeats it again. That it has to be done with the right people in mind. Shina tachaisu hakosav shina alav la'ake. Torah repeats it to tell you that it's vital. So you can't have in mind a stranger who is not really counted into the group. And we're assuming that the menuyin factor, which we just established as being critical, is similar to the oichlin factor. Ishlefi achle. You have to shecht it for a person who can potentially eat the carbon. We're assuming just like menuyin is important and critical, likewise the oichlin factor is important and critical as well. If you have in mind a tummy you cannot eat tonight, it's possible. V'yiskish oichlin the menuyin. So how could you, as an owner, who knows you can't eat, who knows he can't eat, he's a Tamei Meis, how could he have the Korban Pesach done on his behalf? How is it kosher? The answer is Ziknei Darim le'makshi. This connection between a non-eater and an uninvited guest, this connection, according to Ziknei Darim, doesn't hold true. They don't connect the two. Uninvited guest is worse than a non-eater. So bottom line is, if the owner is Tamei Meis, despite the fact that he can't really partake, but the evidence works. So that was the Gemara. Okay, fine. Let's go back to the main point of Ziknei Darim. That if a kohen who's tamei tends to a korban yachid, so it depends. If he's tamei sheretz, it's possible. Tamei meis, it's okay. Really? Says the Gemara, v'chila makshi. So even if they don't make this connection here, and we sort of put this issue aside, nami, we still have a kasha on that. Meham nami, islu pircha. We have another direction to ask from on ziknei darim. Look, umabim kaim shnit mubalam b'sheretz. Because even in a situation where the owner of the korban pesach was tamei tumas sheretz, a light tumah, we just finished saying shemishalchen korban hasem l'chatchila. There's no reason not to send in their korban. By the time nighttime comes around, they'll be available. They'll join the seder. There's no reason not to do it. So you send it in, have regular kahanim take care of it. So despite that sort of advantage, even you agree that if the kohen became tamei with hasheretz, he can't take care of the korban. If he does, it's possible. Situation where the owner can do it l'chatchila, a kohen is possible. Certainly, makim in a situation shenitma bailam b'meis. If the owner became tamei tumas meis, well, even you agree ziknei darim. It's not really preferred to send it in at that point. Maybe it works. Sheim mashalchen korban is saying lechatchila. It's not preferable for them to send in the korban. They should wait for Pesach Shenis. Even they, ziknei darim would agree to that. So in a way, you're already dealing with a bidi eved, less than preferred situation. Certainly, wouldn't you agree? Likewise, a kohen, the kohen who's taking care of that korban, shenitma b'meis, became tamei through meis. Eino din shein meratzef. Certainly, wouldn't you agree that it doesn't work? So again, regarding tumas sheretz with the owner, and the way has an advantage over the kohen, because he could send in the korban when he's tamei sheretz, but still in that same situation, a kohen, if he were himself tamei tumas sheretz, it wouldn't work. Even by the Evid, certainly if the owner, who's tamei tumas meis, shouldn't be sending in the chatchila, so he's already one down. Wouldn't you agree that if a kohen is tamei tumas meis, it doesn't even work? That's a kal v'chomer. So this basically seeks to challenge, to undermine the position of ziknei darim, who say that if a kohen who's tamei meis took care of a korban yachid, it works. And we sort of leave this, unresolved. This question is sort of left hanging in the air, and that explains why the Rambam doesn't pass like ziknei darim. He says that a kohen who's tamei is mechal avoda, whether he's a tamei sheretz, meis. There's no allowance for korban yachid. Okay, meis. Let's go back and discuss another point, another kasha. So again, ziknei darim introduced a new chiddush in halacha that if a kohen who's tamei meis takes care of korban yachid, it works. And as we explained, after this whole back and forth, ultimately it was based on two understandings, two halachas. If a baalim of a korban, like a korban pesach, who's merely tamei sheretz, would like to send in his korban at Erev Pesach, sure, no problem. Likewise, if it's a tamei meis, he shouldn't be doing it. If he does it, it works. Meis becomes a kash. The Mishnah Mesachas Pesachim, like this. Neisha Amru, because it was said, Nazir, a fellow who took a vow to abstain from wine, etc. At the end of his process, he will bring karbanis, provided that he's tahar. If he's tamei, he has no business being karban. He has to wait until he can refresh himself and start over again and complete it properly. So Nazir, v'oisei pesach, likewise, an owner of a korban pesach. It turns out that the korban material became tamei and it was processed regardless. Hatzitz miratze al tumas dam. There is a special allowance that the tzitz, the gold plate of the Kohen Gadol on his forehead, Kodesh Lashem, can override some impurity concerns regarding the korban material. So suppose the korban, the blood of the korban had become tamei and was processed regardless, the tzitz can override that and sort of certify it. But it will not override, certify, and okay tumah related to a person. Let's say the owner, right? It doesn't address that. Ve'ena tzitz miratza. Tzitz will not be miratza. Will not deem acceptable Tumah concerns regarding a person, a body, an owner. Al tumas hakuf. Now, again, which tumah are we speaking about? Let's analyze the halacha. B'may. Ilema b'tumas sheretz. Is the owner merely tummy sheretz? What's the issue? You don't need the special dispensation of the tzitz. We just said a tummy sheretz can send in a carbon, no problem. Ha'armas, you just told me. Sheichtin v'zerkin al tumas sheretz. What's the issue? Ella must be tumas meis, that the owner became tummy tumas meis. Uktani. And the Mishnah clearly says that's a problem. Einat tzitz maratze. Tzitz will not take care of it. Alma apparently nitma ba'al b'meis. The owner became tummy through a mace. So again, we're assuming that we're speaking about the owner. Ein mishalchen carbon same. He may not send in his carbon. He has to wait for Pesach Sheni. That's a kasha on Ziknei Darm who say that it works. Now we say it doesn't work. Lie. Who's to say we're speaking about the owner? Granted, idid tamu balma meis. Achanami. If the owner became tamu tumas meis, of course, if he would send it in, it works. We're speaking about the kayin. When the Mishnah says that the tzitz can't address personal tumas, that's the kayin. What happened was that the kayin touched the sheretz, and he was involved in a carbon. There's no way to undo that. No way to certify that, to machshir that. And that's consistent with Ziknei Darm's opinion as well. But now the question is, if so, the Mishnah is discussing tumas sheretz, and since, as we explained, it's a personal tumah, the tzitz will not take care of it. Let's move on to the next part of the Mishnah, which speaks about an interesting phenomenon called tumas, a tumah which was down in the depths, hatahaim, which nobody knew about. It was just discovered by surprise. So although typically personal tumahs are not overridden, as we just explained, if the kohen is tummy to masheretz, there's no way out. But if it so happens to be that he processed the carbon, not realizing that he's tummy because he was involved in tumas hataim, which was just now discovered, nitma tumas hataim atzitz miratze. That's another exception to the rule. The tzitz will take care of it. Now you're telling me that we're speaking about tumas sheretz. If that's the concern, tumas hataim doesn't address tumas sheretz ever. Tani Reb Chi explained to us in a brayso, tumas hataim was only said el l'meis b'lvad regarding tumas meis. We're assuming when he says l'meis, he means l'mutamai as opposed to what? As opposed to tumas sheretz. Lav l'mutai tumas hataim de sheretz. There was an unknown hidden tumah, would involve the sheretz, will not be addressed, will not be okayed. So if you're telling me the first part of the Mishnah, speaking about tumas sheretz, is not going to work with the second part of the Mishnah, which clearly states that tumas hataim will address personal tumas as well, because that only works by tumas meis, not tumas sheretz. La, incorrect, says the Gemara. Reb Chia never meant to exclude tumas sheretz. L'mu'te tumas hataim de ziva, he meant to say it was an unknown, real personal tumah, ziva, or personal mission, tumah. So then, even if it was unknown, and it doesn't get addressed by the tzitz. But tzitz can address tumas meis and tumas sheretz. So it works. Says the Gemara. Okay, so according to this, a kohen whose tummy, even tumas sheretz, can benefit from the tumas hataim dispensation. But Rambam Bar Chama wasn't really sure about this. What about Rambam Bar Chama's question regarding this very issue? Kohen hamaratze v'karbon same. A kohen who's involved in processing the carbon of a nazir, the carbon of a carbon pesach owner. So what if he encounters a tumas hataim? Will he be absolved or not? Hutraloi tumas hataim? Oiloi hutraloi tumas hataim. Shall we say that tumas hataim is only a special allowance for the owner and not for the kohen? Or perhaps, hutraloi. Did he have this allowance of tumas hataim or not? Well, according to what we just finished saying, clearly he will benefit from it. Tivshait. We should really resolve this question, that in fact the tumas hataim hutraloi, even a kohen can benefit from tumas hataim. Because this Mishnah, which discusses tumas hataim, is speaking about the kohen, as we just explained. Says the Gemara, the Rami Barachama Vadai Pliga. You're right. That was Ziknei Darim's opinion. They held that the owner is a non-issue, because if the owner is Tamei Sheretz, he can send in the carbon. Even if the owner is Tamei Meis, if he sends it in, it works. The issue is only the Kohen. Right? So if the Kohen is Tamei Sheretz, it's an issue, but Tumas HaTayim can address it. That's Ziknei Darim. But Ram Bachama disagrees, you're right. He says, no way. The issue is the owner of the Karban Pesach, because the Karban Pesach was a Tamei Meis, may not send in his carbon. Because if you can't eat, you can't send it in. It doesn't work. Right? So in that sense, he disagrees with Ziknei Darim. And on that, the Mishnah says, look, if it was unknown to him, it was a surprise Tumas HaTayim, okay. That overrides the owner being Tamei. Okay, so he's clearly disagreeing with Ziknei Darim. And therefore, he wasn't sure. That triggered his question. Well, here we find that Tumas HaTayim can address the owner. What about the Kohen? He wasn't sure. Says the Gemara. Okay, so back to the basic dispute. Ziknei Darim hold that even an owner who was Tamei Meis, who sent in a Karban Pesach, it's kosher. And he need not bring a second, Karban Pesach Sheni. Tashma, he comes a raya. That in fact, that's true, it works. Pasuk regarding the tzitz, right? The tzitz, which overrides the Tumah issues on the Karbanis, says, V'nasa Aaron, Aaron HaKohen will absolve certain sins regarding Karbanis. Now, it doesn't specify which sins. We're assuming it's impurity, Tumah sins. How do we know? There's so many different types of things that can go wrong. There's pigel, there's all kinds of machshavas we spoke about. So which deficiency, which carbon problem will the tzitz take care of? Let's go through the options. Even im avoin pigel, Rashi learns, pigel here actually means chutzlam kaimek. So he processed the carbon, planning to burn it or to eat it outside, the Beis HaMikdash, which the Torah calls pigel hulei ratzah. Well, that has no allowances. There are no leeways on that. What do you mean? It's not factored. It's not counted. It's totally possible. There's no way out. That's out. Im avoy noiser. Perhaps we're speaking about avoy noiser, where he planned on eating the carbon, in a couple of days' time, or makar the carbon in a couple of days' time. That's called chutzli lizmanai. Perhaps the tzitz can take care of that. No, once again, Pasuk says this carbon is unacceptable. So the only option left is Tumah issues. Apparently, apparently the tzitz will address Tumah issues. Why is Tumah different than the other ones? You know why? Because, Tumah allows for some slack. We find exception to the rule regarding a public carbon. The public can process their carbon even when they're Tamei. Okay, so since we find some leeway, we assume that that's the purpose of the tzitz, to address Tumah concerns. Let's say the blood of the material of the carbon becomes Tamei, and was processed, that works. Now, there are different types of Tumahs. Let's go through the options. My Tumah, which Tumah are we speaking of? Which Tumah will the tzitz take care of? Ilema, Tumah Sheretz. We're speaking about a Tumah Sheretz. So let's say the owner was Tamei Sheretz, and he liked to send in his carbon. So as we said before, he could, but you know what? He really needs some sort of special override, because the fact is, he's currently not a potential eater. He's still Tamei. So we need a special, dispensation, a special allowance that tzitz will allow him to send in the carbon. And again, this is based on the fact that we find some leeway regarding Tumah by tzibur. But guess what? We never find leeway regarding Tumah Sheretz by tzibur. That's the halacha. The tzibur is Tamei Sheretz. We can't process their carbon with Tumah. Hey, chiyishte, what do we find? A green light regarding Tumah Sheretz by tzibur. So apparently we're not speaking about Tumas Sheretz, Elo Tumas Meis. No, apparently we're speaking about Tumas Meis, where we find that if the public became Tamei Tumas Meis, they can process their carbon b'tumah. And likewise, in a private setting, V'lav, and we're assuming, if the owner became Tamei with Meis, the halacha is that the tzitz will take care of it. Alma, apparently, nitmu, balam, b'meis, mishalchan, carbon is same. If an owner became tummy with mace, and he sends in the carbon, it works. That's all right. The Ziknei Dar who say a carbon Pesach owner who's tummy mace, if he sends in the carbon, it's okay. Now, are we speaking about a carbon Pesach? Or are we speaking about a Nazir? Ubemai. Ibn Nazir, or speaking about a Nazir sending in the carbon? When he's tummy, how can he send in a carbon? The Torah says, if he encountered a mace, he has to wait patiently. He has to redo his whole Nazirus experience and then bring carbon. So you can't bring a carbon now. No way. El Yosef Pesach. Apparently, the only one left here is the Yosef Pesach. The only option is a Pesach owner. Speaking of the owner became Tamei Meis, and still we say that the carbon works. That's a right. The Ziknei Dar says, well, no. Loi lo'ilam. The Sheretz, perhaps, is speaking that the Sheretz is the tumah that we're speaking of. The owner is a Tmei Sheretz, fine, send in the carbon. But a Tmei Meis wouldn't work. Ask you a question. If it's a Tmei Sheretz, how could the halacha of the tzitz overriding be based on the fact that we find leeway in a public setting? We don't find leeway by Sheretz in public setting. Right? There's no way to process the carbon, the tumah, just because it's Tmei Sheretz. We don't find that. You're right. So although this particular situation doesn't allow for tumah b'tzibur, but in concept we find that tumah at large, in general, has leeway when it comes to tzibur. So likewise, we assume that if you have to pick any deficiency which is overridden by the tzitz, we're assuming it's tumah related. But again, perhaps we're speaking of the owners of Tmei Sheretz, and that's why you can send in the carbon. Who's to say that even if he's a Tmei Meis, he can do that? We don't really have a raya, so we haven't really substantiated our proof to Ziknei Darim's position. So now, before we conclude the last and final piece of this complicated sugya of Ziknei Darim, let's just recap again the main points, the main chidushim of Ziknei Darim were as follows. A kohen who is tamei, who processed a korban yachid. So if the kohen was a tamei sheretz, kohen is possible. If he was a tamei meis, the korban is kosher. Let's just go through the facts. It was based on some halachis regarding the owner, and this was what generated the kal v'chomers, etc. So the basis, foundation was basically two halachis. If an owner of a korban pesach is merely tamei sheretz, he can send in the korban, take care of it tonight, and join it tonight. Regarding a tamei meis, that was also a chiddush. So even if the owner is a tamei meis, he will not be able to partake in the korban pesach tonight. Nevertheless, if he sends in the korban, it works. Says the Gemara, we're going to make one final attempt at refuting their position. So actually, there was another version of this last conversation who sought to use this brisa as a refutation, as a kasha. Some analyzed the brisa differently, and used it as a kasha. Sought to disprove. Number one, that if a kohen is tamei, and he processes a korban yachid, it's possible. Number two, even if the owner is tamei meis, even if it's just the owner, he cannot send in his korban pesach, it won't work. So again, the brisa began with the pasuk that the tzitz will address avoyin hakachim, deficiencies regarding the kachim. So only tumah regarding the actual material itself. If the blood is tummy, if the fats are tummy, avoyin hakachim avoyin magdishin loy, but not deficiencies, tumahs, personal tumahs regarding the people involved, the kohanim, the owners. It will not address that. My tumah. Now, which tumah are we speaking of? Ilam tumah sheretz. And the Mishnah and the Brisa actually explained the reason why we're allowing tumah to be taken care of by the tzitz is because tumah, in a sense, has leeway, has dispensation regarding a public korban tzibur, where tumah is done away with. So we're assuming that tumah is easier to address and to accommodate. So again, when the Mishnah says, when the Brisa says, based on the pasuk, that we only override strictly cover material issues of Tumah, not personal issues. My Tumah, which Tumah are we speaking of? We can be speaking about Tumas Sheretz or Tumas Meis. Either Tumas Sheretz or speaking of Tumas Sheretz. That can't be, because if it's based on the leeway that we have in a carbon tzibur, that doesn't exist by Tumas Sheretz, as we discussed before. Mi Yishtarya, but tzibur, since when is Tumas Sheretz a reason to allow a carbon tzibur to be brought b'tumah? El lav Tumas Meis. Oh, the only option we have is Tumas Meis, where in fact it's allowed by a carbon tzibur. If the tzibur is tamid, kehanim tamid, they can process it b'tumah. Likewise, if a similar issue arises in a tumas in a carbon yachid, the tzitz will take care of it. And still, the Brisa, based on the pasuk, tells us v'avan kachim in. This is strictly limited to carbon material issues of tumah. Avan makdishim loy benat, personal tumah issues, such as the kain is tummy mace, or the owner is a tummy mace. It doesn't work. And both these points contradict Ziknei Darim, who say that if a kain is tummy mace, he can ras even a carbon yachid. Likewise, if the owner of a carbon yachid is tummy mace, if you send in a carbon pesa, it works. Says, well, no, lie. Not necessarily so. We're not speaking about Tumas Meis. Loilam Tumas Sheretz. Speaking about Tumas Sheretz. Where in fact, even Ziknei Darim agree, if the Kohen is Tamei Tumas Sheretz, he dare not touch a private carbon, it's possible. Ask you a question. How can this be based on the fact that there's an allowance for Tumah B'tzibur? V'shem Tumah Ba'ilam. As long as we find in some context that Tumah is overridden by Tzibur, i.e. by Tumas Meis, so that gives us a window, that gives us sort of a green light to allow for tzitz to address some form of Tumah, even by Karban Yachid, even though it's not the same Tumah. It's close enough. Okay, so conclusion. Ziknei Darim gave a chiddush, big chiddush. Although the Mishnah says the kohen who's tamei is possible for carbon, that's only tamei sheretz. But if he processes the carbon when he's a tamei meis, but it works, just as we find that tamei meis is allowed by the carbon tzibur, and went through a lot of back and forth, seeking to substantiate their shita, to refute their shita. But in any case, their opinion was also based on two halachas regarding an owner who's tamei. An owner who's tamei sheretz may send in his carbon pesach. He'll just be able to join up tonight. And even a owner is a tamei meis, stuck in the middle of his 7-day chatchili, he should wait for Pesach Sheni, but even if he will not, and I'll send in the carbon today, it works. Okay, let's continue. Yoshev, Mishnah says a kohen who's in seated position while he's doing the avodah, you can't do that, and it's possible. We know. How do we know? Amar Rava, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Kra, Lamad l'shares. You meant to stand while you serve. Lamida b'chartev lo l'yishiv. I chose him to stand and not to sit. And Rashi says, well, if he's seated while he's doing the avodah, he's like a zar, he's like a non-kohen in that regard. And a zar is mechalal de avodah, right? So a seated kohen is like a Yisrael, is qualified for avodah. Tan Rabban, we learned in a brayso. Likewise, Lamad l'shares tells you mitzvah. You meant to stand. Well, how do we know that in fact it's critical? When the pasuk says ha'oimdim, again, stand. Shin olav hakasav la'akiv. By repeating it, the Torah is telling you that it's critical that he stand while he do the avodah. In fact, that's why we stand by Shemoneh Esrei. Shemoneh Esrei, which is the highlight, the peak, the high point of our tefillah, which is connected karban. That's why we stand like the kohen serving the Beis Hamikdash. Amalei Rav Nachman. Look, Michti, let's think about this. Yayishev kazar dami. We've just concluded a kohen who's in seated position is like a non-kohen, like a zar, like a Yisrael, and that's why he disqualifies the avodah. So, Ema, why don't we say a step further? Ma zar b'misa, just like if a Yisrael does the avodah, he's liable to misa b'dei shamayim. That's the punishment prescribed to that. Af yoshev b'misa, likewise the kohen who's seated while he's doing the avodah should be liable to misa. Alamatani, we learned in the brayso that although it's possible, but it's not b'misa. Aval oral, an oral oinen, a yoshev, a kohen who's sitting. Ain't no misa elabasara. They're warned they shouldn't be doing it, but there's no misa. Why? Sitting equals zar, and zar equals misa. The answer is because we find that in two instances the Torah says there's misa. And we know that when the Torah repeats something once, and then, again in a different place, why repeat it? You could just learn one from the other. To tell you, it's limited to these two places, and don't expand it further. The Kohen who's missing his clothing. Likewise, the Kohen who failed to wash his hands and feet. Two instances where the Torah says that there's Misa. Shnei Ksuvim, these are two psukim, habayin ke'echad, which coincide with respect to Misa liability. And it's telling you to limit it to only those cases. When we find two sources applying a halacha to two different cases, it's limited to those cases. Then you can't apply it elsewhere. Says the Gemara, but there's a shita which disagrees. It says, according to the opinion, it says malam, even if you have two psukim, you can still apply it elsewhere. The answer is we have three instances where the Torah says they are liable to misa. Not limited to those three only. Shtu yain, because the kohen who drank wine before serving, havalei shlisha, that's a third example of misa liability. Ushloisha, when you have three sources, according to all shitas, ein malam, you can't apply it elsewhere. Hence, a yeshiv, although it's possible, but there's no misa involved. All the best to you, and that's lachar.